Bounty hunters. They're hired to capture criminals on the lam. In law enforcement circles, they're considered the last and most drastic resort.
Some bounty hunters seem to be taking more extreme measures to get their jobs done. That's an issue that's being hashed out on Capitol Hill this week, and Fox's Colin Spencer has the story.
A quiet beginning for a hearing that brought to mind the days of the Wild Wild West, dealing with rogue bounty hunters. The legislation on the table, the Bounty Hunter Responsibility Act, which would hold bail bondsmen accountable for hiring reckless bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters are free to break into the homes of people thought to be criminals without any accountability to innocent individuals who may be injured because of wrongful and abusive conduct.
Bounty hunters are hired to find bail jumpers who have fled or don't show up for court. In the past few years, they've come under fire for overstepping their boundaries. Congressman Asa Hutchinson says it's a national problem.
These abuses occurred in the states of Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, and I could go on through the entire list.
I'm at 5035. There's been a shooting. I think there's 2 people dead.
In 1997, 5 masked and heavily armed men broke into this Phoenix, Arizona home and fatally shot Christopher Foote and Spring Wright. Neither was wanted for any crime. And Pamela Reed shared her story of mistaken identity. It happened to her family while vacationing in California. Bounty hunters broke into their hotel room and held them all at gunpoint.
I had chest pains. I was scared to death. I thought we were all going to be shot. I thought I was going to be shot or raped or something in front of my husband and my children. We had no idea what was going on.
But bail insurance companies say this legislation will drive them out of business.
This bill will have the effect of taking out of the arena the insurance companies that underwrite the criminal court appearance bonds in this country. We cannot survive under this legislation.
This proposed legislation would continue to allow bounty hunters to cross state lines to catch bail jumpers, but they would first have to notify local police where the arrest is taking place. In Washington, Colin Spencer, Fox News.
Now, in this country, bounty hunters are not regulated, but the question is, should they be?
Joining us now to hash this out, both sides of the debate, from Washington, the Executive Director of the National Association of Bail Enforcement Agents, Mel Barth. And also, we are joined by Jonathan Drimmer, a lawyer fighting for the regulation of bounty hunters. And here with us in New York, Scott Bernstein. He is a bounty hunter who's Director of Operations for Falcon Investigations and U.S. Bail Enforcement Agency. We welcome all of you gentlemen. Scott, first to you. Now, congratulations. 2,000 fugitives you have brought in, and you got to be congratulated for that. You've taken these folks off the streets. However, in those 2,000 apprehensions, you must have, over the years, had made some mistakes of some kind, gone knocking on the wrong door, maybe even bashed down the wrong door, no?
No, not bashing down the wrong door, maybe knocking on the wrong door. However, what we're dealing with when we deal with the general public and we're dealing with relatives and friends of fugitives, we're dealing with people who are giving us misinformation. Some of that misinformation originating from the bail bond application. So we're taking into consideration all these different factors that we have to render ourselves in the field. So occasionally, yes, we'll knock on the wrong door. I myself have never taken down the wrong door.
But it doesn't go further than that. You haven't violated anybody's rights, any innocent person who you mistook for a fugitive?
I've never violated the rights, but you have to understand one principal factor. The fugitive on the run has no rights. When he enters into a bail bond agreement, he waives all his rights. If I know 100% that my fugitive is behind a door, is failing to open that door, not giving me access to those premises, then and only then do I have that permission to knock that door down and take him any which way I can.
Then, Scott, where's the problem? Because if all of the bail bondsmen acted as you do, then there would be no problem. And yet we see congressional hearings, and there are a lot of complaints out there.
Well, you got to consider something. We've had 25,000 arrests last year with maybe about 12 different incidents of misarrest or misappropriation, or what have you. If you take into that consideration, that small percentage, you need to go into regular law enforcement, that figure goes to about 1,000%. So where's the problem originating from?
Let's get the other side in here. Jonathan, let me go to you. Jonathan Drimmer in Washington. You know, there was a Supreme Court decision all the way back in 1874, which essentially gives these bounty hunters the right to do what they do. They say they can imprison the fugitive until at what time the sheriff decides what to do. They may pursue him to another state. They may even break and enter his house for that purpose. So the law seems to be on the side of the bounty hunter.
Oh, the law governing the rights of bounty hunters is extraordinarily broad, and I should add the Supreme Court decision in 1873 didn't say anything new. It actually restated what the law has been since the formation of the United States. But I think that your reading of the broad rights bounty hunters have is pretty close to accurate.
So how do you propose to change things?
Well, the law that's been proposed on the Hill would change it in three ways. The first is when a bounty hunter crosses state lines, he has to notify local law enforcement. The second, it's to create more accountability for the bail bondsmen when they hire rogue or unprofessional bounty hunters. And the third would require bounty hunters to abide by similar restrictions to those that govern the police.
I'd like to ask a question of Mel Barth. You know, we've been seeing a lot of problems involving these bounty hunters, and yet Scott here is telling us that's just a small, misrepresented small portion, that the overall majority of the bounty hunters are doing their jobs properly and they're taking dangerous criminals off the streets.
No question about it. First of all, I'd like to say hello to Scott. He's been my agent of the year in '98 and '99. And frankly, Scott underestimated the amount of arrests that we perform. It's closer to 35,000. And when you have one incident in 5,000 arrests, that's a pretty low figure.
Well, Jonathan, let me get back to you. You're kind of outweighed by two guys on the other side. You mentioned a case in Phoenix. Can you tell us what happened there, and is that the worst that can happen here?
Well, the case in Phoenix was it's a poor example in that these men breaking into the house weren't actually bounty hunters. This was actually a robbery, and they were trying to use a bounty hunter cover in order to get out of trouble.
I see.
But the number of incidents that Scott and Mel give, I think their number is a bit low. I will absolutely agree with their statement that the vast majority of arrests are made without incident. But when there are problems, they do tend to be very violent. They're gross invasions of privacy. And it's those few incidents that the federal bill is really trying to correct.
Jonathan, I just want to go back to that U.S. Supreme Court, 1973-74 we have here.
1873.
It's 1872.
I beg your pardon, 1870.
Right.
All right. The seizure is not made by virtue of a new process, the Supreme Court
That's
ruled
right.
way back then, because none is needed, it says. It is likened to the rearrest by a sheriff of an escaping prisoner.
That's correct.
So what the Supreme Court seems to be saying is, go ahead, knock down the door, grab that guy, because the process has already been gone through. That person has already been arrested.
That's close, but not quite. Basically, what the Supreme Court is saying is that the rights that bail enforcement agents enjoy come from private contract. Now, that really can be a legal fiction. There may not actually be a bail contract that's put into place, and if there is a contract, it may not spell out the broad rights that a bail enforcement agent has. But it's the process that it refers to is state process. The rights are deemed to come from private contract and not state process, and that's what the court is talking about.
Scott, very quickly, we're out of time, basically. Do you enjoy your work?
I love my work. I love taking dangerous fugitives off the street, securing the safety of the public, and we're doing one principal factor. We're not costing the taxpayers 1 red cent.
All right. Scott Bernstein, Mel Barth, Jonathan Drimmer, thank you all. It's a fascinating subject. We thank you all for being on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Kathy, I got to leave you. Have a great hour and a half.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Still ahead on Fox News Live, I care. That's the answer to the question, what's